My name is Petra Bayr. I'm a member of the Austrian Parliament for more than 11 years now. I did my very first political activity in the age of 9 at primary school when I organized a strike to avoid a dictation, and it was successful, of course. And later on, I was a speaker, a spokesperson of of the pupils of my school. I was editor of the pupils newspaper. I worked at the radio, the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation, and that was when I really got involved into politics, because I made one of my contributions about censorship on pupils newspapers. It wasn't enough for me just to report about problems of young people with my radio station, but I really wanted to change the situation of young people, and so I thought that I really might got involved into politics. It could help a little bit, and that was when I tried to do that on a very local level. And quite soon, I started with a young women's group in my district, it's Favoriten, the 10th district of Vienna, where we organized some seminars and empowerment measures for young women. And quite a lot of them are meanwhile involved into politics here or there. And I myself got first member of the district parliament of my district. Later on, I was member of the city council of Vienna, and 11 years ago, I was elected to parliament. And I also chair the women's organization of my party, of the Social Democratic Party in my district. I think that I'm convinced that women are still underrepresented in political bodies. And I really observe for a long while now that parties who have a gender quota or a women's quota are doing much better, and they send much more women to those political bodies, to parliaments or whatever. And those parties who have not do not have the necessity to send them there. And also, when I look at the fields, at the political fields, ministers or MPs are working on, it's still so that these fields are quite close to gender stereotypes. So, for instance, we have in Europe in general much more ministers and spokespersons for social affairs or for family affairs or for education, and very few financial ministers, female financial ministers or ministers for economy. So it's still those kinds of stereotypes on traditional roles. And I think that we really should change that and make it quite normal that women are ministers for traffic, for housing, for finance. Yeah. I think that we are quite happy. Austria has a very successful and a very progressive law on preventing domestic violence. And I think that the Austrian law on that is quite a role model for many other laws in Europe, at least. Because, for instance, we have the possibility that if domestic violence appears, then the police has the possibility to ban the offender and make him leaving the house. It's not the women and the children who have to run to a shelter, it's the men who have to leave the house, the flat. And after that, when in a very short period of time, a judge can decide that this man who is violent, it's mostly men, sometimes it's also women, of course, but usually it's men who are the offenders, that they are not allowed to go to these areas where women and children usually go, for instance, to the school of the children or to the kindergarten. So there is quite a ban for offenders that they are not allowed to go to the same regions. I'm quite engaged in the struggle, in the fight against female genital mutilations for all my life as an MP. Meanwhile, I founded the Austrian platform Stop FGM, and I'm trying to make networking with all those authorities, ministries, NGOs, counseling bureaus, or whatever, who try to inform about the legal situation in Austria, and to help women from the communities where FGM takes part to empower themselves to be able to argue against this violation of human rights. And that is quite successful, I would say, in Austria. But of course, that's a very other kind of work, of political work. We also try to support by our development cooperations programs that are going on in those countries where FGM takes part, and where we try to convince from the very ground level communities and organizations to stop with this tradition and to stop with this human rights violation. And also, when we look in general on female genital mutilation, then we see a lot of success. It's not banned everywhere, of course. There are still very high rates in some countries of women who are suffering from that, girls who are suffering from FGM, but there is a clear decline of the figures and the numbers of women and girls who have to undergo this procedure. I think for politics in general, it's very important to include the daily life experience of all people, of the whole population living in a country. And I'm quite sure that I'm convinced that no country or no society is that rich that it can ignore half of the knowledge, half of the experience, half of the talents of their population. So, of course, it's necessary to include women in all decisions because of their different standpoints, because of their different ideas how to solve problems. So I think that's very important. And when it comes to barriers, I noticed that I learned that it's quite hard for women alone to tear off barriers. It's much easier if you also convince men to do it together, and to convince men to have women involved into policies. And of course, for some period of time, that's quite hard because it's very often all the men who are elected, and it's then younger women who come on the free seats. And it's a really hard time for young men who are also very good and very talented to do some politics, but that is an individual problem for themselves, for them, that they cannot make a political career for sometimes because of quota. We have to fill free seats with women, and I expected it myself. It's really very hard to convince young men from their personal position to be in favor of quotas, but at the end, those parties and those countries who did it also see the success and see that it's really possible to turn down all these barriers. There is a lot of things we can share. There is a lot of things we can learn in Europe. For instance, when I look on parliaments like Rwanda, who have more than 50% of women MPs in their parliament, I think that they should fantastic quotas and fantastic tools to engage women into politics. I think that we could learn a lot of each other, and also I'm sure that it's not possible to take one model from Norway and transform it to Malawi, or to take a Kenyan idea and do it exactly the same in Austria. But I think that you can reflect about the mechanisms and the systems that hinder women to engage in politics, to have fun, to do politics. And that's something I would advise everybody, also young women who think about maybe to go to politics, to build networks, to empower each other, to reflect what's going on, to find the patterns that are behind often structural violence, which you are not aware of sometimes, that it's really a barrier for you not to be able to go somewhere, or not to be able to not to be taken serious by some men sometimes. And I think to exchange experiences, to exchange points of view can bring us further also across the continents and across Africa and Europe.